it's amazing how the further I go, the more I realize how much I don't know and that I still have to learn. The minute you think you've got it sewn up and you kind of got it together, you'll probably get a blindside. You'll be like, wow, I don't know where that came from. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. My name's Max. I'm the CEO at Smith & Sons, and look, today, as usual, we want to bring some value. We want to make sure it's super practical and super helpful, but just some quick housekeeping to get started. Like and subscribe, tick the bell, all that kind of wonderful stuff. And be sure to head across to the Business for Builders Facebook group, Business for Builders VIP Facebook group, that is. And if you're a good sort, I'll let you in. But it's a really great place, for community collaboration and a bit of camaraderie as well as it relates to building a successful contracting or building company. So look, again, in true form, want to give you guys and gals some really good stuff to think about and to consider as you're driving between jobs or as you're on your way to the hardware store, or maybe as you're kicking back, just having a listen. And we really thank our audience and our viewers for hanging with us. We really do, want to make sure that we're sort of bringing to you guys and gals information that you can really implement and get started with, and that'll help you build a successful, strong building company. So today, what I'm going to quickly chat about, I've got 6 points to think about as it relates to, you got to know your limits. And I think I've seen enough in the building game in over 33 odd years of doing this, that, I think we all are like sort of kids. We get started, we have these big eyes and we want to build a monstrous business. And, I've been fortunate enough to have been involved with and been around some pretty successful operators, one of which was the guy I did my apprenticeship with. Big shout out to Philip Usher. And, when I first met him, he'd only just come out of, he was building bridges on golf clubs and today he's building high rises on the Gold Coast. So the guy is just remarkably successful, and as it relates to building companies, and the stuff that he's doing today is pretty amazing. So I look at a guy like that and I think, well, not that he gave his limits a second thought, but he was very much a natural. And I think the harder you work, the luckier you get. And so, I think, unfortunately, what we don't understand is that we need to know ourselves, and we've got to maybe understand that patience is a major part of the game. And I think another part of that is to know your own human resource as a person and what it is that you've got to at your disposal to go and build a company. And so, I think as I talk to my general contractors, a lot of them really, they understand that you've either got to stay, a $200,000 to $300,000 business being a one-man band type approach, or you've really got to put together a business infrastructure that consists of the general contractor, who might be, the upfront sales, an admin, a project manager, and a really good, solid, reliable group around him to do that. So understanding that your emotional quotient, we always talk about IQ or intelligence quotient. What we're talking about is our emotional quotient. It is how you are as a person, how you can really compartmentalize the challenges in your life. And I speak from experience. I've had a few challenges and continue to do so. But at the end of the day, the thing is we've got to think about, and I guess it really helps me get clarity and get some context, is that, we're just talking about making money. I really encourage you to be, in a time where things aren't maybe going the way that you want, you might want to just take a look around you and be thankful for the good things in your life. Because at the end of the day, we do this business thing to try and make more money, and yet it does become the piece de resistance. It's like the top shelf concern or the top shelf thing that we think about, going to bed and waking up. And I don't know that that's completely healthy. I know, we look outside here and there's blue skies and the snow's melting, and, we're about to get the go-karts out of the trailer and go racing in April. And so, to me, I love just getting out on the racetrack and letting my hair down and Robin's racing. And so, those kinds of things. I play a bit of music as well, love to play a bit of rock and roll. And, I think there's some time, I've got a great wife and great kids and good family life, and a good support network. And so, if you're not blessed to have those things around you, then I'd encourage you to sort of just find something that you do really lean on, that you can say money can't buy that. Just what we've got to focus on. I think a lot of the time we spend, way too much money that we don't have buying shit that we can't afford to impress people that don't give a rat's ass. And so, I think we've just got to be a little bit more realistic in our approaches and how, we see what, some of the times we look at ourselves and we have this idea of what we need, what we think we need to be, when really sometimes we overstate that. And I think we take a lot of the stuff that actually is important that money can't buy, we take that for granted, and we need to be careful. But okay, moving right along. That was a good little intro. What we're talking about is knowing your limits. So this is more of a practical approach, but it does mix a little bit of emotional quotient in there as well. You got to know your limits in order to avoid, say, overcommitting, or taking on, say, projects that are beyond your capabilities. And that is a dangerous one. I have seen that happen more than once, whereby somebody has put their hand up and said, yep, I can now. I would say that I felt this type of fear and trepidation because I was doing $80,000 and $100,000 contracts, and then I won a job to build 5 townhouses, and it was $1.1 million. And that will put the fear of God into you, absolutely. And that was such a massive step up. That was literally 10 times what I was used to doing. But fortunately, because of where I'd done my time, building townhouses was not completely foreign. So as much as it was a big monetary jump for me, I was very familiar. I had a great network of trades, quality suppliers, etc. And it really did create a solid infrastructure for me to go and build that project successfully. So the first thing that we want to do in identifying and managing our limits is to identify our areas of expertise. So determine what sort of projects and services that you and your business are best equipped to handle. I think that too often we kind of want the bling and the romance of having these big projects, and I would definitely say that I would prefer. A lot of my guys prefer to build, to do $300,000 renos in a $25,000 bathroom. But at the end of the day, actually the one piece of advice that Phil Usher did give me back in the day, I told him, I said I wasn't winning very big jobs. I was doing smaller projects. And he said to me, Max, sometimes the smallest fish are the sweetest. And so I've never really, from that point on, I've just appreciated the fact that I was able to be busy, the fact that I was able to serve clients at that level, that I could take that opportunity to maybe better myself as an operator and maybe to make a few dollars along the way as well. So, I think what we don't want to do is we don't want to, and I talk about outrunning your supply line. I think sometimes we can try to motor ahead faster than what our legs can carry us, and we end up falling flat on our face. And so I think that comes down to, if you don't identify your areas of expertise, the type of projects and things like that, you can find yourself getting into some seriously hot water, and I've seen it happen. Point number 2, you've got to set realistic project goals. I think you've got to be honest with yourself about your capabilities and your capacity. I've talked about capacity before. I think about the 21-year-old Max versus the 50-year-old Max. And there's a capacity enlargement that has taken place in the last 30 years. Now, I don't feel it, I don't see it, but, I do carry a fair bit of load and a fair bit of stress. And all stress is weight on your back. Essentially, that's what it is. Some of us are set up and have the ability to carry and deal with more stress than others. And that's a very individual game. And that's where self-awareness, again, kicks in. You need to know where your limits are. This is what we're talking about today. You need to set realistic project goals and timelines. I think sometimes we can be a little bit overzealous, and we can overestimate our ability to deliver and all we need. And I was sitting down working on 3 project schedules today with my general contractor. And, there was, and it's funny, it's a very intuitive thing. We're talking about some main floor renovations, post $100,000 jobs. And we're saying, right, we need to schedule cabinets. And, I don't know, you probably know as good as I do, getting cabinets is a 4 to 12 week program, depending on what you're asking for. And then, if you're doing stone countertops, which we do a lot of, you've got to make sure that, you want to get the templating in ASAP straight away if possible, because, it takes 3 weeks to get stone countertops delivered. And so you're burning the best part of 2 to 3 months on the kitchen. So, it's really important that as we sit there and we do our schedule, specifically around if you do what we do, and that is fixed price, and we set a completion date. You'd want to have the right tools to enable you to extrapolate the different tasks out and convert those to an actual build schedule. Because if you're just kind of picking a duration, a project duration, then what you're going to find is you're probably going to either maybe overdo it, which is probably not a bad thing, but a lot of the time you're going to undercook it, and all of a sudden you've got clients going, well, you told us you'd be done this in 8 weeks, and we're only really just getting cabinets fitted now. We're never going to be finished this in 8 weeks. So, you've really got to make sure that you set realistic goals, because what happens is you've just created self-inflicted stress, because now you've got clients breathing down your neck. You've got, non-committal, say, cabinet makers, if you like, and everything's starting to bank up. And if you have that going on 2 or 3 fronts, all of a sudden, you as a person are not enjoying the position you're in. And it is self-inflicted to a certain extent. So you really got to make sure that your project goals are realistic and that they're within your capabilities for you to execute at that level. Okay, point number 3, you've got to manage your resources, both financially and your human resource. I know that, there's a challenge around, you've got to manage financials. We can talk about back costing. We can talk about, comparing your actuals versus your budgets. We can talk about understanding, what your fixed expenses are, what your minimum billables are, what your break-even points are, what's an appropriate markup percentage, what's your appropriate margin, profit margin percentage, all those kinds of things. But you've got to understand, you've got to be able to handle the human resources at your disposal as well. You can have all kinds of trades that have a really weird outlook on how they operate and how they talk to you as general contractors or builders. And, it sometimes it's like you've got to be the frigging adult figure. It's like, dude, don't give me the story. I just got to get that done. That's the end objective. Let's get after that. What do you need? Whereas they want to just go and, blow smoke and frigging blame people and carry on like pork chops. And at the end of the day, we're not interested, because the client is what's important to us. The completion of the product and the delivery of that product to the client is what's important. Unfortunately, nobody gives a shit about your feelings, Mr. and Mrs. Subcontractor. It doesn't make my job any better. And I think we talked about, in the last couple of episodes somewhere, we talked about that micro care, which is looking after the next guy or gal coming through. Super important that we, manage our relationships, which essentially is human resources, that people don't get tired of being around us and our whiny sort of wetting our pants bitchiness or whatever the case may be. We want to be a proactive, a positive, a very constructive troubleshooter, and somebody that adds value to the overall community, which is what I talked about in the last podcast. You want to be a contributor. You want to belong to a certain community. You don't want to have yourself getting kicked out of these communities because you're a bit of a dick to be around. So, but in some cases, we as a general contractor, and I've made decisions today. I've said, I'm tired of working with that subcontractor because he's a whiny bitch, and all he wants to do is justify his mistakes, and I'm not interested. I pick up the phone and I ring somebody else. I ring another tradesperson. And, that's part of management, hiring and firing. It's got to be done, because what you're trying to do, momentum is hard to get and easy to lose. And nothing guts the momentum within your project delivery than a subcontractor. Matter of fact, I was talking to another one of my guys in Nanaimo saying the same thing. His painter went AWOL. He doesn't know what happened to him. He presented a quote. He agreed to start the job. And then a week later, he's gone missing. So maybe he's sitting on a beach because he won lotto. Who knows? But, those kinds of things, you've got to make those decisions fairly quickly. Otherwise, the momentum within your project delivery, and you can lose a week just like that. It just happens so quickly. And so we've got to be on it and manage our financials and our human resources, and, of course, how we execute. Point number 4 is develop a network of subcontractors and suppliers. I talk about this all the time. You want reliable subcontractors. You want quality suppliers. You just need to have the ability to pick up the phone and get service. Nothing's worth. In this little town, and it is a little town of 40-odd thousand people, you really want, we've got a network of reliable suppliers, and we sometimes have to do a ring around. If we need doors on short notice, sometimes we've got to ring 2 or 3 of those suppliers to figure out who can get us product the quickest. And it's almost like price is fairly comparable. Maybe it's a little bit more expensive, but we need to get it on site because we've got to keep the momentum in the project. That's super important. Subcontractors, if they're having a good time at home, they're probably good at work. The minute the shit hits the fan for them socially or personally, it can really affect the way they do business. So what you're looking for is a maturity level in your subcontractor network, because I'm telling you that you need reliability from your subcontractors, because they do, and never forget this, builders and general contractors, but your subcontractors do make you look good. Now, the flip side is subcontractors understand that the builders are really quarterbacking your pipeline and your workflow, because you don't have to advertise and you don't have to do any marketing. You just keep getting purchase orders, or here, go to the next job. Here's your next job. Here's your next job. And you're getting these handouts. So, it's super important. I think whether you're sitting here as a subcontractor or you're a builder, understand we cannot do it by ourselves. As much as we think we can get back on the tools and, do it better than anybody else, and I concur with that point of view, it's not sustainable. And I think we really need to build that community and that team around us to make it happen. And that consists of a network of subcontractors, reliable subcontractors, and quality suppliers. Point number 5, continuously improve your skills and knowledge. The more you learn, the more you earn. Warren Buffett said that. The better your attitude, the higher the altitude. So, I think that we've got to understand that, like I said, maybe on a recent show or at the beginning of this show, it's amazing how the further I go, the more I realize how much I don't know and that I still have to learn. The minute you think you've got it sewn up and you kind of got it together, you'll probably get a blindside. You'll be like, wow, I don't know where that came from. So, I think we've got to really have a good understanding. We've got to stay up to date with industry trends and technology. We're only looking at software again today, different, ways that we can project manage specifically. Client communication digitally is super important to us at this time, that we're trying to fill that gap because, we know that clients are busy more often than not. Our client base, they're both at work. And so we don't get a chance a lot of the time to interact with them during the day. And so it's really important that we have the ability to give them updates. And of course, we use technology to do that. So obviously, continue improving your skills. There's a book that I call there's a book called Skills with People by an author by the name of Les Giblin, and it's a really super easy book to read, and I give that to all my team, because everything that we're doing revolves around your ability to deal with people. And, that's another skill. So I think if we talked about the skills that we need to learn, there'd be quite a few different verticals where you and I as building contractors or builders, we need to really have a black belt understanding in all of those, very similar to having a black belt understanding of all of what our trades do and how they interface and how they work together and how they fit together. We also need to have an ability to understand things like, business development fundamentals, financial management, human resource management, understanding how we calculate what our break-even point as it relates to our financials, what's our work in progress, what's the level of equity within our business. Like, there's all of these kinds of things that we really need if we are going to operate. People just think, we're going to go build a big business, so all you got to do is win another job. It's about building a sustainable program in the areas of construction, and not just go hard for 5 years and then burn out and go back and work a job at Home Depot or whatever. So really developing your skills and your knowledge. Communication skills is another one of them. Find out what's important to them, make it important to you. That's a fairly good piece of advice. You really want to, especially in the areas of sales, you've got to understand that clients really are looking for value. They're not all just looking for price or the cheapest price. In this day and age, especially if you're doing renovations like you might, like we do, people want to know that you're going to be there at the back end, that you're going to finish the project that you started, that you're not just going to run off with their money and all this kind of shit that you see on some of these horror stories. And so, I think, if you're going to be competitive, you've got to understand that delivering construction services at the highest level should be your priority, not to be the cheapest. Now, you've got to demonstrate value. If you are going to sell a Rolls Royce or Ferrari to a client, you've got to show why it is that they're going to spend that kind of money. And so that's something for you to think about. That's why understanding how you're going to present that message to your market is super important in helping you build a more profitable business. Okay, point number 6, be selective with clients. This is where I'll finish. you've got to have what we call a preferred client profile. It's so important because I think a lot of the time, if you're not getting enough inquiry per month and you're only getting 1 or 2 or 3 inquiries, you feel like you're obligated, to quote, and you have to take one of those jobs. If you disqualify all of those, what are you going to do? Which contracts are you going to sign to start work on? And so, of course, this always comes down to your marketing message, filling your top of funnel, but demonstrating value to the clients at the highest level and displaying or demonstrating what it is that you do different to your competitor. I've often talked about how in this ecosystem here in Canada, all we had to do was figure out how we were going to, demonstrate value in the areas of fixed price contracts, and it was going to give us a very distinct advantage over our competition. So, a lot of the time we qualify fairly hard because we understand that, there's a chemistry thing going on. I mean, if you've ever been in a sports team or a rock and roll band, chemistry, is super important, and it's very important between builders and clients. You need to identify what your preferred client profile looks like, and not just, they're between 48 and 75 and they're successful business people or business owners or whatever, but they are a certain type of personality that maybe meshes with you, and it's super important, So there's several different layers or criteria perhaps that you might need to ascertain as to the type of person that you actually want to work for. If you're working for a know-it-all person, that's going to become quite challenging because you're just like, dude, this guy's killing me because he doesn't believe a word I say. That means the decision to not work with that person should have been made before you go into contract, not after you go to contract, because now it's too late and you've got to deliver. So, what we're trying to do is minimize the friction. Friction creates heat and it creates drag, neither of which are good for business. So we want to make sure as we develop a contracting business or a building company that we're not putting the brakes on our company because we're working for the wrong clients. We want to make sure that we're not creating heat within our business unnecessarily, that we are working for clients that don't create friction within our operation. And so it's super important. So, to summarize these points, point number 1, you've got to identify your areas of expertise. Make sure that you're not overcommitting yourself. Set realistic project goals, super important. And obviously goals and timelines is really what it's about. Manage your resources, both financial and human. Develop a network of reliable subcontractors and quality suppliers. That goes without saying. You've got to make sure you're improving or continuously improving your skills and knowledge. Be selective with clients. And, all of these will help you build a successful and a sustainable contracting business. If you've got any questions or queries or concerns, be sure to hit me up on email, max@businessforbuilders.ca. Shoot across to the Business for Builders VIP Facebook group. If you're a good sort, hit the join button. I'll let you in. And we'll do some more under the hood stuff there, which, hopefully will help you out. And, if you've got anything on your mind, just let me know in the comments, and we can we'll do our best to return, serve, and help you out wherever we can. Go build a kick-ass business. See you on the next episode. Cheers.